Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Terran Warchants are terrifying. Written by Hinterland Seer. Zarak rolled his shoulders in anticipation of the coming landing, shifting eagerly in his seat and running his claws along the grip of his plasma caster. His group would be running a joint mission with the now infamous Terran Marine Corps, specifically the 1st Interplanetary Division, or as they were more commonly known, the Housekeepers. He only had a fuzzy understanding of the colloquial nickname, something to do with the ancient Terran slug throwers used during the major war in their history being named some kind of cleaning implement, broomsticks or dirt sweeper or something like that. What he fully understood was that they earned the nickname when they had swept through an entire entrenched enemy position using the relics. One of the Marines across from him had such a weapon hanging at their side. The thing was a hunk of steel and wood, and even though they was clearly religiously maintained, it was showing its age. The results spoke for themselves, nonetheless. Every deployment the Housekeepers were sent on saw them returning with even more decorations and medals than before. Every single mission. It had him hopeful that he would finally get to see the Terrans in action, as even lesser divisions were popping up in the extranet with details of possible victories. The explosive rise to dominance on the battlefield, no matter where, had many of his compatriots eager to see just what the tactics allowed the youngest military to be so successful. He was rather abruptly pulled from his musings of potential battle strategies by 2 quick, deep thuds against the ship. That was odd. They shouldn't be nearing the planet for another hour, and those slimy K'Beltal wouldn't be opening fire on this dropship shutter for another 2 after that. Once they deployed into proper atmosphere. Before he could think of any probable issues, a loud, notably Terran clap resounded through the shuttle. A heartbeat later, the thumps repeated themselves, becoming the obvious sound of one of the Marines stomping their floor. Then they clapped again. The noise seemed to get the attention of everyone in the shuttle in the form of confused looks from the non-Terrans and amused grins from the Terrans. As the Marines repeated the act attempting to stomp a hole through the floor plating, Zerlak fully believed the Deathworlders were more than capable of that if they actually tried. Several of the other Marines clapped in time with them, and so it began. As the entirety of the 1st began in time their stomps on the floor, finishing the assault with an eager clap. Yet it didn't end there. As just before anyone else could voice their rightful confusion over the random violence, the Marine who started it bellowed out a line that made even less sense. He called out to someone, though Zerlak couldn't figure out who for the life of him, about how they were an experienced youth who would go on to do great things. He thought. As sudden as it was, he was hopelessly lost over why this had started, and his and everyone else's confusion only grew further as the rest of the Marines cried out in unison to use rock against that poor boy the 1st Marine called out. Not once did the rhythmic stomping and clapping stop. The thing shifted, and the Marine called out the young man full of potential, again of unknown identity, claiming that they were a hardened survivor from the streets, going to build themselves an empire against an entire world. And as the tiny speck of understanding dawned on Zerlak, the rest of the Marines all repeated their threat of rocking that person. Not once did the rhythmic stomping and clapping stop. Zerlak realized this was not a call to lynch someone or an evaluation of the potential of a talented individual, but the chant the humans used to build a battle further. And he was terrified. The effects of the primal music and the heavy stomping and clamping filled him with dread. And the unfolding story of the now aged man begging for peace after a lifetime of fighting being cast aside, and the enthusiastic chanting of the crowd of Marines brought forth Zerlak's instinctual urge to curl up in a tight ball and wait for the threat to pass. He was not the only one crippled by the Terran's powerful Warchants. Not once did the rhythmic stomping and clapping stop. The Terrans continue to win engagements because they throw their entire beings into everything they do, and that effort usually has the effect of showing just how serious these Deathworlders are about devotion. To most militaries around the galaxy, to throw one's entire self into something would usually have a limit of personal investment. This is not the case with Terran militaries, where personal investment is much the same as societal obligation. Thus, when the Terrans throw themselves into something, it is taken to mean that they are devoting with the lack of any limitations whatsoever. It is the lack of limiting their devotion that has led to the numerous units and factions within the galactic community being utterly terrified of the things as simple as soldiers hyping themselves up. End of story. Story number 2. Humans Think Explosives Are Pretty. Written by writer Unblocked. Humankind, as a species, in its entirety, is obsessed with combustion. They revel in all facets of it. The warmth, the energy, but most of all, the sight of it. This isn't unwarranted, of course. The discovery and harnessing of combustion has been declared one of, if not the most pivotal step in a species' path towards evolution and dominance over their planet. At least, on the planets where combustion is possible in the first place. However, humans differ from most sentient races in their approach, as is the case with most things. Where other races mastered friction first, or trapped and harnessed the light of nearby stars for the purpose of achieving heat, humanity made leaps and soaring bounds to pure combustion itself. Open, uncontrolled flame. It is unlikely that humanity was completely unaware of the previous methods mentioned, but they did make a point of choosing the most difficult and dangerous form of creating exothermic energy as the one to master first. Contrary to popular belief, humanity was actually very slow to harness the power of the natural magma of their planet. Human and Earth-trained scientists are at the forefront of technology that makes use of molten planetary cores, but that leap forward is a relatively recent one. In researching this phenomenon, I questioned every human I could about why they thought their species was so fixated on combustion and on fire itself. The most sound reason was a mix of comfort and safety. This is understandable. Earth is a seasonal planet, and therefore an understanding of thermodynamics is necessary to survive and thrive in colder regions and seasons. The next answer was also logical. Cooking. Humans have been using heat to enhance and expand their catalog of foodstuffs for almost as long as they've existed. With even cursory glances, I couldn't believe the sheer number of things on Earth alone that could be made edible, let alone more nutritious than their base form with the simple application of a little heat. Other races used to argue and compete over who came from the most distinguished culinary pedigree. Those claims have long since been decisively silenced. The third and most common answer I received, I simply didn't and still don't understand. I just like it. I expected to hear more and more about how it furthered technological advancements, and to be fair, those points were raised. Generations of human weapons, vehicles, and various machines all utilize combustion in one way or another. Now the roots, though, human fascination with combustion, simply that, fascination. Many of them described to me creating a combustion reaction to simply gaze into it, literally becoming entranced or even hypnotized by the flame. It is because of this that I believe the human known as Piranha D. Selman should be released and pardoned from all charges raised as a results event detailed in Case 17IK-2409. Transcript follows. You said that you were going to get that door open back there. How do you plan on achieving that? I'm going to blow it up. What? How? This is a space station. Everything in, on, and around us is specifically designed to not explode. Yeah, on their own. What is that supposed to mean? The fire suppression in this is that green foam that you guys make, right? Yes. Okay. Well, on its own, it snuffs out flames. It's a chemical compound like anything else, though. If we get enough of it in a small enough space, with some of that aerosolized adrenaline substitute, it explodes. What? How do you plan on getting that gas here? That vent right there. Atlas is in medical hooking up some canisters up as we speak, and Carson is in engineering, making sure the right pipes are all linked up. And how do you plan on creating a small enough space? By triggering the emergency airlock, and before you ask, I'll do that by shooting the panel open from back here-ish. With the what? Firearm? This one. That's not a firearm, that's a stun pin. It doesn't have a projectile. Not normally, no, but I modded the battery. Now all I need to do is dial up the charge, hold it like so, and the pin flies off pretty damn accurately. How do you know that? Sword Online. This model is actually about to be phased out because of exactly how easy it is to do. Okay, assuming all of this goes to plan, the first component is still missing. You don't have the means of creating a fire to trigger the suppression system. What do you think is in the battery I'm about to blow up? How many of the countermeasures and failsafes on the station do you know how to manually trigger? How many are there? What? Also, you're going to destroy your hand, maybe your whole arm. And you're okay with that? I mean, it's gonna suck. Not as much as letting that door stay closed, though. How much longer until this insanity? Let's see, Atlas, how are we looking? Acknowledged down there, Chief. Just waiting on the go-ahead. Translation. All good down here, Chief. Just waiting on the go-ahead. You good? Just cracked the vial the first time I tried to hook it up. It's got a good snuff at the air. Probably not good just to hear it, no, just don't need it. It's like epinephrine if you can't breathe. Translation. Yes, just cracked a vial the first time I tried to hook it up. Got some of the stuff in the air. Probably not good to be near it if you don't need it. Stuff's like epinephrine you can breathe. Will he be alright? Should be. That said, if this works and we'll survive, we'll definitely need to lock him down. That sounded like someone on stage 1 of becoming a junkie. Carlson, all green on my end. Actually, a lot of stuff's red and yelling at me now, but the drugs are on the way. Alright, here goes something stupid. Transcript ends. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.